So we were able to see, I think, earlier than a lot of folks, the impact that generative AI was going to have on technology and in this space. So we have been working with and are now actively rolling out generative AI capabilities with regard to sourcing and negotiation. And this is really, really exciting stuff.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study series. In this episode today, we have Erin McFarlane, who is the Vice President of Operations at Fairmarket, where she leads the company's efforts in optimizing procurement and supply chain technology. With over 20 years of experience, Erin is a seasoned expert in sourcing, contract negotiation, spend analytics, and she drives innovations in autonomous sourcing platforms, which is why we're excited to have her on the show. Welcome to the program, Erin.
Hello, hello. It's a pleasure to talk to everybody.
So let's, to get things started, do a little bit of a dive into your background, who you are, where you came from, and how you ended up as the VP of Operations at Fairmarket.
Sure. So I fell into procurement right as I left college. Right as I finished up college, I took a job as a temp working for CVS in their corporate headquarters in Rhode Island. And I got assigned to a project which was to automate the ordering of cigarettes, which were at the time a really big part of CVS's business, and also all the ordering that was happening in the back offices for pharmacy. Up until that point, and this is kind of me dating myself, it was either the store manager's responsibility or the pharmacist's responsibility to know how many of particular items to order on a regular basis. So the pharmacist would use what he or she understood about their clientele to order the right number of antibiotics, or blood pressure medications or whatever. And that was just in their head and part of their responsibility to make sure the shelves were stocked. But we had the job of trying to convince them that it was a better direction to let the computer predict the ordering based on sales trends.
Hmm.
And I was put initially just in the department to train those pharmacists, but long term it became about change management as I stayed a part of the team, into our biggest resistance being that the pharmacists and the general managers really thought they knew better than the computers of what to order. And trying to help and educate them that taking this away from them wasn't an attempt to take their jobs, but it was an attempt to let the pharmacists spend more time with actually talking to customers and reviewing prescriptions for safety. And that it, again, gave the same kind of opportunity to the general managers rather than spending their time placing all of these orders for stock, that it let them shift. And even though I fell into it, that has then been a pattern of the work that I've been doing throughout my entire career, has been adjacent in some ways to that purchasing, procurement, and supply chain, and specifically in the automation of that. So I've worked in a bunch of different technology sectors, banking, and finally at Fairmarket for the last 5 years in actually building software that can automate this process of how companies buy the things that they need in order to provide for the general public. So it's been fun, and it's kind of the hidden side of sales, because if you think about it, on the other side of every business transaction, we're very used to thinking about sales and marketing, but there's also, especially in enterprise and business, there's a business side of it about that process of making the decision to buy, about actually placing the order, following it all the way through and making sure it gets fulfilled. So I find it fascinating, and it's been a great career option for me.
I'm such a nerd for some of this stuff. You are reminding me of my early days in the world of marketing. I had a job for a couple of seasons where I was working for a merchandising company, and one of our roles was to go and make sure that stock was, correctly displayed in stores, and the right number of stuff was there. And we had, and I might be dating myself also, we had a lot of relationships with the store's purchasers, which is not necessarily as predominant of a thing nowadays. I
Okay.
guess thanks to the work that you're doing. And we used to have this ongoing joke when we would show up to places where maybe there was stock that wasn't there that should have been there, or the stock people are kind of filling holes with duplicates or things like that. And, we'd be like, oh, they must have hired a new buyer because they don't know what they're doing and they're still trying to figure out the numbers. And so I
Yeah.
love that the work that you're doing is kind of, it seems to me like it's very data driven. You're taking the data and information that the company, as things are moving through that store, and then you're using that to kind of influence how these different products now flow through that business. Is my understanding accurate?
Yep, that's part of it. That's definitely part of the whole process. But if you think about all the things that different companies buy, so working for a bank, we bought a lot of technology, software that was used to run the online banking systems. The most frequently purchased item when I worked for the bank was lollipops and dog biscuits. You believe it or not, in terms of quantity, because of the
Yeah.
amount of lollipops that you give out, all the way down to things like making sure that when you walk into a branch, that the couches and the carpeting and the desks and everything have a brand that is well understood, that is so all of those sorts of decisions about how you buy, who you buy, that's what a modern day procurement or supply chain is. Those are the kind of decisions that they're making. Is not just what's on the shelves in retail, but all the way through the experience of organizations, whether it's indirect stuff like carpets and technology, or whether it's direct purchasing of the things that people actually will purchase from these companies. That's where procurement and supply chain have a hand in deciding how that gets into those places, what prices it goes for. So it's a fascinating side of the business that I think a lot of people don't think about.
And so I wonder how, with the advent of some of these newer technologies like AI, something that I'm learning is that it has been available much longer than I have ever been present to. So I
Okay.
imagine you've probably had some experience with machine learning and large language models and that sort of thing. Could you share a bit about the practical application of that in the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So Fairmarket got its start doing a lot of machine learning work. Now we've kind of graduated into generative AI and we're doing a little bit more advanced. But where we started was machine learning, in that. So as you're thinking about companies buying things, and let's go back to the CVS example of maybe cigarettes or pharmacy equipment. The initial build of all of those were all single sourced, meaning that when the system placed an order for something, it bought it from the same supplier. Always, right? It had maybe a preferred contract or a part number that was matched to a particular supplier. But you might have noticed something happening in the last few years. People started noticing there were supply chain problems, right? That things weren't in stock. And that was happening in many cases because those businesses were set up automatically to buy from just one person. But in a free market and in a best case scenario, when you're buying things, you want to get quotes and you want to understand, of that thing that I'm buying, can I buy it from multiple suppliers? And if so, what does the price, what does the availability look like? What's their ability to provide at the level of service that I want? So what we've built at Fairmarket and what we've been working on is a way for organizations to do automatic competitive bidding, for the things that they need to purchase and for the services that they're buying, rather than just automatically getting them from that one supplier that they've got pre-programmed.
Oh.
Instead, it's about allowing and opening it up to the market. So it has been really fascinating because it lets a lot of smaller organizations and different companies be exposed to and have the opportunity to work with these big companies. So Fairmarket is about taking those purchases that might have been automated to a single supplier and opening them up to the market.
That's such an interesting take on it, and I'm curious to learn what sorts of challenges pose themselves now that you're opening it up to so much more. Like I imagine that the data, the SKUs, the businesses themselves, there's just a lot more moving parts.
Yep.
What came up when you kind of opened up the floodgates, as it were?
Yeah, one of the things that we found is that organizations, we work with the biggest companies in the world. So the largest companies in the world, many of them have supplier databases of 25 to 30 suppliers that are registered to do business with them already, that have risk assessments done, that have been pre-vetted through their systems. But that many suppliers is too many for people to keep in their heads. So one of the initial problems that we had was, well, when you open it up to a whole market at large, especially for something um, that isn't well defined or that has a lot of risk, it can be really the risk level might be more than a company is willing to go for. So what we spent a good amount of our time doing is working within a company's existing supplier base and then adding in suppliers only really when they're necessary. Um, so we had to balance those approaches of you want to have a free market and a fair market that's open, but you also need to balance continuity risk and supply chain risk and information security risk to make sure that the suppliers who are proposing in these situations are properly vetted. So I think that balance has been challenging for us. I would say one of the other challenges just in general that we found was the challenge of incredibly fast growth. So we started just by doing parts like MRO and widgets and flanges and gloves and stuff. Um, but we kind of hit the right moment during the beginning of COVID 4 years ago of our customers taking Fairmarket and using it to solve supply chain problems globally. So for us,
Ooh.
a lot of our recent challenges have been, all right, well, we know how things work in America, but how do they work in Brazil? How do they work in Italy? And how do we get our data and our capabilities to a point where we can function around the globe, even though we're just a little startup in Boston? Not so little anymore, but that's been kind of the journey is how do we keep up with the demands that our customers are putting on us and help our customers leap forward into this kind of AI world.
And that's a really good problem to have is that
Yeah.
you have an abundance of opportunity around you. And I'm so happy that you're in that space. That's such a good thing to have for your business. So I imagine then that the customer acquisition part of this doesn't necessarily pose much of a challenge as much as it would be kind of going or sifting through all of the opportunities. What's your approach to managing that flow of opportunity?
Yes and no. So we're defining a new space. That this isn't a situation where everybody's been doing this thing for a really long time and it's well understood. Like if you're selling accounts payable software, everybody goes, I know what that does. I know what that is.
Right.
It takes a decent amount of time to even explain to people what is this problem and why would I even want to bother solving it before they're ready to invest? And there can be a significant amount of change readiness that needs to happen.
Hmm.
So what we have ended up doing is we are very focused on education and thought leadership. So we're spending a lot of time, and we always have, educating people about the concepts that we and the problems that we solve. So we had to come up with this phrase that we publicized in the industry called tail spend, which is the small things that companies buy on a day in and day out basis, but that don't get a lot of attention. And when we entered the market, that phrase was pretty much unheard of. So we had to define what that was, why it was a problem, what the opportunities were. And we've really had to lean into the why. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, of course I'm buying from the same supplier and over again, but if it ain't broke, why fix it? So I think that's what we've had to focus on from a go-to-market perspective is educating customers that they even have a problem to begin with and that there is a software that can solve that problem. So helping them to uncover that, see the opportunity and move forward.
Yeah, it seems like one of those cases of you just don't know what you don't know until you do know it, and then when you do, it's a glaringly obvious problem
Yeah.
that requires a solution. So I guess from there, how do you measure the success of a client? Like, how do you know that you've done a good job with them?
Mhm. So a couple of different ways, and it depends on the customer.
Yeah.
So customers who purchase us for cost savings is pretty straightforward. We're buying widgets and we had been buying it at this price. We put it out to get multiple quotes and we were able to reduce it to this price. So we get massive amounts of data and we can actually straight up track the savings between what you used to pay and what you're paying now. So it kind of the dream marketing
Yeah,
perspective.
that's really
There's
good.
no arguing about whether that's ROI and whether you're really generating savings. So we do have those numbers, which we track. We also track things like lead time and availability. So in some cases, if you can get something for 10 cents cheaper, one little widget, that's not a big deal. But if it were back ordered and it was going to take 6 weeks to come in, but for 10 cents more, you can get it tomorrow.
Ah,
Well, that's got some benefit to it too, right? So that would
okay.
be the next is kind of availability. Then we're talking about things like efficiency. If you could have automation do these events for you, how can you reallocate your people to do more interesting, more strategic stuff? So we spend a lot of time on that. And I would say finally, we do a lot of work around ESG, supplier diversity, engaging more small suppliers or more minority owned suppliers or more sustainable suppliers. So we do some measurement around that.
Right. So then I get the sense from you that Erin, you're very passionate about what you do. You are so knowledgeable. You are excited about it. Um, and to some degree that's contagious. Like I can feel it even virtually coming through the screen. Uh,
Mhm.
I wonder how much of that you use to help empower the team, like the people that you work with. Is that a part of your success? Is keeping that team as excited about this as you are?
Absolutely. And also our customers, because I think a lot of people who are in this industry of procurement and supply chain didn't come here on purpose. We fell into it. Um,
Right.
I went to school for history, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, it's not on the
so
list of
it's not on the
extracurriculars.
list. Yeah, the guidance counselor doesn't say to you, "Hey, I think you should consider supply chain." So part of it is in making people see how important that aspect of our economy is as a whole. Both our
Right.
customers in making them see that their job is just so vital and helping them to promote and tell stories about the work that they do, and also for people coming to join Fairmarket to see that this is the kind of work that is really significant, makes significant change in a big way. That we are helping to power some of the largest organizations and making the way that they purchase more fair is a really big and important job. But it does require some education and some yeah, some evangelism. So definitely I would say on both sides, I think it's really important in both ways to shed some light on the importance of this occupation and on the importance of the software that can really help empower these people at big companies around the world.
Yeah, you're really dialed in on the purpose. Like I think that's something that a lot of people miss in any role in business or in entrepreneurialism is really understanding the bigger picture thing behind the work that you're doing and how
Mhm.
you're kind of shifting and impacting the world around you. So I love how aware of that you are. On that note, what is it that you're kind of looking forward to or working on that's kind of coming down the pipeline? What's on the horizon for the work that you're doing, Aaron?
Yeah, so we were able to see, I think, earlier than a lot of folks, the impact that generative AI was going to have on technology and in this space.
Mm.
So we have been working with and are now actively rolling out generative AI capabilities with regard to sourcing and negotiation. And this is really, really exciting stuff. I know everybody says AI and they talk about the buzzwords, but then when you go look into it, they're using it to draw pictures of cats. Um, like we're actually using it in a really remarkable way to help companies make better purchasing decisions. So we have a new intake tool that we're really proud of that can do sort of this interviewing of requirements process. So let's say you're hosting a company event and you need to hire a catering company for this company event. The way that you would normally come at this is maybe you're the HR manager and you're going to, do a 600 person event. Might be to just go to Google and pick up the phone and talk to the catering company that you know and hope they ask you the right questions because you don't even know what questions to ask.
Right.
So what this new software will do is ask you those sort of questions. Tell me about the location. What kind of food are you looking for? Is it high end or low end? Do you have an already established menu? How many guests are you looking at? Do you need beverage service? Do you want to do plate rental? So that kind of back and forth understanding of requirements then allows us to have like a full package. Hey, this is what we need to get quotes on, which we can then deliver to local catering companies, and they know they're all quoting on the same thing. And then you can make a decision, which one do you want? So really using AI to provide that specific knowledge around what is it that you're buying so that everybody can get to the point of making a better decision on things like that. So catering was one example. We saw another one play through the Gen AI system on you need to have a parking lot resurfaced. But there's lots of questions like, is there a curb? Are there any grates? Do you need to have it dug out or not? And it's awfully difficult to make purchasing decisions when you don't really understand what you need. So we're really excited about that and about the ability to make it easier for companies to define what they need so that more organizations and more, especially smaller businesses, can quote on those things, have the opportunity to work together.
Yeah, I think the thing that a lot of people are fearful of when it comes to this type of technology is that it's going to replace them.
Yeah.
But I get a sense that the work that you're doing is not necessarily to replace people as much as it is to make people's lives better and easier. And I love that that's part of the work that you're doing.
Yeah. And it's funny because I find myself going back to that me who was fresh out of college and working at CVS. So here I am over 20 years later, and I'm having the same conversations that I did with the pharmacists. With the pharmacists, I was telling them it's okay. You can let go of ordering. You don't have to spend your whole day in the back office just placing orders for antibiotics. You can instead spend your time doing the human things, which is interacting with your patients or using your information to really impact people's lives. And they, of course, were thinking, no, those robots are going to take my job away. This is what I'm here for.
Right.
And we're finding we're doing the same thing now. It's still happening. So by doing this, no one wants to be on the other end of the line telling you how to place a catering order. They want to be negotiating really interesting contracts or researching cutting edge technologies. So our motto around here, we like to talk about is automate the boring stuff. Automate the boring stuff so that so people can do the interesting things that really use our brains.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Is it something that you guys are working on internally, or have you outsourced and partnered with other people to kind of build this stuff out for yourself?
We're building this ourselves. So
Cool.
no, this is Fairmarket in-house. Like I said, we had a chance to sort of get off the ground on this in an unusual way. So we do have partners that we're leveraging different platform technologies. But no, this is our development team really working their tails off.
Yeah, that's awesome. Erin, you've been very generous with your time and wisdom, and for that, on behalf of everyone watching and listening, I'm grateful. Thank you for that. Uh, to kind of bring things to a close here, I wonder if there was somebody in a similar position as you who's kind of going through these experiences, what's one piece of advice that you would offer them to help them kind of get through all of this?
You kind of hinted on it already. I would look for your purpose and look for your why. I think even in areas that might seem stale or dry, like supply chain, procurement, and order reconciliation, there is a bigger purpose if you look into the impact that your work really has. And I think it's important to understand the impact that you have and the impact that a function has to really understand and motivate yourself toward having passion. So I would recommend that anyone look to the why.
That's very powerful, very sound advice. I relate to that deeply in understanding what your purpose is because I think it's driven a lot of the work that I've done, and I can see how it fuels the work that you do and keeps you focused. And for anybody that's listening who needs that focus, I think that's really great advice. Erin, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, perhaps to pick your brain further or work with you in the future, how would one go about doing that?
I'm on LinkedIn, so I would absolutely say anyone who would like to is welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to talk about procurement and supply chain. So happy to have conversations with anyone who wants to hear more.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. And if you want to get in touch with me and my team for any reason, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next.
Thank you.